Nirnay IAS by officers for future officers.
So the main essay paper 2025, not a lot of surprises, अच्छे interesting essay topics, but more or less उसी theme के जिस theme के आते हैं और कुछ दो essay topics in particular are almost repeated. But the सबसे tricky essay topic मेरे हिसाब से was the first one, which is very open to misinterpretation. The essay topic says truth knows no color. Contrary to what people might believe, this essay topic is not about subjectivity. It is not about the Anekantvad philosophy. It is not about the idea that there are many versions of truth and that everything is subjective and that there are perceptions that people can have that may vary. It is about the objectivity of truth. It is about the fact that truth can't be colored, that truth can't be changed, that the aim of truth is that it is what it is. आपके colors, आपके perception उसको taint नहीं कर सकते. Identities and ideologies can merely color our perception, but the truth remains the truth. That is the core theme which the essay topic seems to be addressing. You can use the ethics and administrative point of view over here. You can talk about Lady Justice blindfold. That's a really good metaphor to use here. The equal application of facts and law. The idea is to not get colored, but to be objective. You can use governance, you can talk about the RDI, you can talk about transparency, you can talk about the CAG, you can talk about data dashboards, you can talk about decoloring mechanisms जो government अपनाती है. Everything that is oriented towards transparency, everything that is oriented towards objectivity, such as e-governance, can be leveraged here. When it comes to science, objectivity, climate change, the debate about whether climate change is real or not, etc., PCR tests, you can talk about satellite data, you can talk about facts, you can talk about how science tries to remain unbiased and tries to approach the truth, how the equations of physics do that, how mathematics is essentially, which is the queen of the sciences, is precisely that. It strips away everything that is colored and leaves only logic, leaves only truth. You can talk about the same application of the principle in society. You can talk about, when you talk about being colored, you can talk about the idea of being tainted or being biased. You can talk about caste. You can talk about partisanship. You can talk about common evidence strategies in media and classrooms that can be used. Now, of course, ये सब ideas हैं जो आप include कर सकते हो. It is less about these ideas, frankly. It is more about, number one, the interpretation. Interpretation ठीक है या नहीं है. And number two, how it is written. How it is written will be 70%. What you have written will be 30%. Only and only if you have not misinterpreted it and conceived of it as saying something else which it is not. But this is the only topic, I think, amongst the 8 which could have been misinterpreted. But I've told you what the essay topic thing seems to say, in my opinion. And while you talk about this, the objectivity of truth and the fact that truth can't be shifted. If aapne ethics padhi hogi, you would also have read and understood deontology, which essentially says that truth is its own value, that truth does not depend on the means, that truth is relevant in its own self. Very relevant to this discussion is, of course, Gandhiji's Satyagraha and his ideas about truth. And you could use this as a critical thinking tool to eliminate fact from fallacy. These are the themes that I think you should use, but I don't think that you should finish the essay without giving a counter argument, without saying that what exactly the truth is forever also obscured from our vision. We don't know what the truth is, and whether we like it or not, some amount of coloring, some amount of bias, some amount of error always creeps in our judgment. And the best we can do is to remain objective and to use mechanisms of decolorization to make sure that we see the truth as clearly as it is, even if we don't like it. That, I think, is the low down and the bottom up of that essay topic. Essay topic number 2 was, supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. कहने की जरूरत नहीं है. The art of war by Sun Tzu is writ large in the whole topic. Given that everything around us is so conflict prone these days, given the proximity of Operation Sindoor, etc., you can talk about this. You can talk about strategy. You can talk about how now it is more about intelligence. It is more about, drone warfare. It is about economic sanctions. It is about tariffs. It is less about muscle power. It is less about fighting. Fighting, obviously, is expensive, which is why covert agencies, intelligence agencies do what they do. Statecraft. Talk about statecraft. Talk about alliances. Talk about blocks. Talk about how they are trying. There's always a battle going on. Even there is no war, there is always some battle going on over domination of something or the other. You can talk about cyber warfare here. You can talk about cyber warriors that China has. You can talk about the vulnerability of our own ecosystem. towards it. You can talk about the Doklam style standoff that India had and the posture of logistics, which is not open war. You can talk about narrative warfare too, which is so prevalent that we've seen so closely in Operation Sindhu. See how diplomatic warfare, see how vaccine diplomacy worked, see how Operation Sindhu, after Operation Sindhu, the delegation did what they did. Talk about administration, talk about the address, talk about the process of redesigning beat rates, e-tendering, curbs, graft, all of these things can be inserted. But like I said, there is no way in which you can complete the essay topic without talking about the counterpoint also. And the counterpoint is, at times, offense is the best defense. And sometimes it is inevitable that a show of force happens. You can talk about the new policy of the government, which was articulated recently by the Prime Minister, where he said that blood and water cannot flow together. He said that any act of terrorism will be considered an act of war. You can leverage the same ideas into business, into entrepreneurship. You can talk about conflict resolution. You can talk about mediation. And when you do all this, you have to, at the end of it, like I said, you have to say when deterrence fails without credible capability. Soft power can't really do much unless it is backed by hard power. You should at least have the potential to use hard power. That is when soft power actually gains weight. So that is the lowdown of the second essay. The third essay, very interesting, psychological, philosophical, abstract also. Thought finds a world and creates one also. It is about how your thinking creates the world. They say that art is in the eye of the beholder. When the way we perceive reality is what reality is. There is so much that you can talk about here. You could talk about our own biases, our own perceptions, how, you can talk about how first ideas are formed in the mind. Talk about Einstein's idea of relativity, talk about his thought experiment, talk about how he first conceived of that thought experiment and then how experimental physicists actually proved it. Talk about philosophy and policy, constitutional morality, institutions, welfare state, PDS, Narega. These are all themes that you can insert here. The bottom line is it actually is, I would say, antithetical and opposite to the first essay, which was talking about objectivity. This is talking about subjectivity. It is saying that the way you perceive the world will be the way the world is, seen by you, is experienced by you. So thought finds a world and creates one also. इस टॉपिक में एक inherent integration language की है. Now, in my opinion, this is a difficult topic. Linguistics, particularly for people who have studied philosophy, people will understand that Wittgenstein said that the limits of the world are the limits of my language. The way you describe the world, the metaphors you use to describe the world, define what your world is. And the language we use defines it. So first we conceive of it, and it is a limitation, inherent limitation of language, that whatever we conceive or whatever we imagine cannot always be put perfectly in language. Sometimes it is vague, sometimes words don't capture it. But whenever we use words to capture something that is conceived, it is then open to interpretation by other minds, because people will then read those words and interpret it themselves. And therefore, the message gets confounded. And the more people, it's like Chinese whispers. The more people hear about it, the more they interpret, the more words can have subjectivity wrapped around them. That is what the essay topic is about. I don't need to tell you the examples. Aapne itni GS padh liye that you can insert examples on your own. But the essence of the topic is this. Essay topic number 4. Best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. ये तो बहुत easy essay है. मुझे लगता है आप सब लोग इसके बारे में लिख ही चुके होंगे. कुछ ना कुछ आपको पता ही होगा. Must be one of the topics that is picked the most. We don't need to tell you, everybody. It's almost cliched now that comfort and growth don't go together. All your comfort lies outside the comfort zone. The best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. अब बात तो ठीक है, bitter experiences, when you break your comfort zone, you have to talk about entrepreneurship, you could talk about your experiences, you could talk about the child's experiences, you can talk about hit and trial, you can talk about all of these things. You can talk about value education. You can talk about also the fact that a counterpoint being that this is not always the case. After you have explained it, after you have supported it with your arguments, with your examples and with your data, you have to end up also saying that it is not always the case, that you need to learn everything about the world through bitter experiences. There is something called vicarious learning. There is something called role modeling. There is something called learning from others' experiences, which is equally important, if not more so. The whole point of education is to give us a simulation, is to give us a mimicry of the real world, which in safe bound allows us to explore enough such that we do not falter and hit ourselves irreversibly in the real world. That type of content you could put. This essay topic does not have to have a lot of condensation of GS. It doesn't have to have a lot of jargon. ये simple भाषा में लिखा जा सकता है ये वाला essay topic, और इस essay topic में impact बनाना आसान है. आपके पास जितनी भी knowledge है about stuff like this, which is general motivational inspirational stuff, apart from combined with some element of GS, should be more than enough to get it through. But yes, that is the overall gist of the topic. The fifth topic, very interesting. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Now, the analogy and the metaphor is that if there is a problem, muddy water, there is not all problems need to be directly intervened with. Not all problems need direct intervention. Sometimes non-interference is the best policy. And cooling off will actually restore balance. Such is the nature of many things, but not all things. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Again, if you are going to take the analogy further into its logical conclusion, you will find that it's talking about distillation. Leave muddy water alone, the mud will settle down because it's heavier and the water will float up, and then you can distill it out from the top layer. This you could use in a lot of different examples. You could use that in business, you could use that in conflict. And a very interesting example, although it's not so relevant, there are places in the world where divorce rates are almost zero, and they are zero because they leave people alone in a tower and then for 30 days, and then most people, after they come down 30 days living together and locked up in a tower, do not end up getting divorced. And so there are times when you don't need to poke the needle inside the problem. You can of course take this idea and talk about various things, but to my opinion, most cases it does not apply. Most cases it does not. You should be careful in how you define muddy waters and what you understand by muddy waters. If you understand muddy waters, corruption is an example or a simile to muddy waters, then you would be wrong, because you can't just leave corruption. Corruption doesn't take care of itself. It needs direct intervention. It needs direct intervention. There are things such as overthinking, such as anxiety, where we think too much, overanalyze, and paralyze ourselves in the process. Such things, categorize them properly and make sure that the distinction is clear in your essay, can be and should be resolved by leaving them alone. Over-parenting is a great example of things which don't need direct intervention. But then again, you would have to be careful while connecting it to muddy waters. So, what you categorize as muddy waters and what you categorize as requiring intervention versus not requiring intervention is the whole point of this essay topic. Categorizing it, structuring it is the challenge. The interpretation of the essay topic is not the challenge in this one. The sixth topic, also interesting, but also rather straightforward. The years teach much, which the days never know. We are talking about experience here. We are talking about the element of repetition, of hit and trial, of what one accumulates when they spend time, when compounding happens. It is talking about inexperience and it is talking about impatience also. So there is an element of experience and there is an element of patience here. There is a difference between knowledge and there is a difference between wisdom. There is information and there is actionable intelligence. All those things require time. Now, when you talk about this essay topic, you will have to talk about life career. You can talk about your life career, you can talk about skills, you can talk about reputation, which cannot be gained immediately. You can talk about social capital. You can talk about networks that people build that last a lifetime. One of the biggest researchers in happiness, the longest research in happiness, ended up concluding people live the longest when people have healthy relationships. They don't live longest if they have very high impact days necessarily. Economics, you could talk about economics here. You could talk about the compounding of money. You could talk about day trading, which is very thrilling but also very risky. You could talk about slow compounding that Warren Buffett has done and the impact that it has caused. Here again, you could talk about social norms. You could shift gradually. But like in all the other essay topics, you will have to counter-argue also. Not everything needs to be dealt with patience. There are things which need a push, which need to be moved faster than typical. And of course, various examples of that. So that is the gist of it, but I don't think it required much elaboration. The meaning, the interpretation, the content, all very clear. In this topic, if you chose this one, it would really ultimately boil down to how well you have written it, how clearly you've structured it, and how concisely your meaning is coming through from your words. The seventh one, interesting and repetitive. It is best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. Last year and the year before that, or suppose the same, more or less the same question was asked. Life is a long journey between being human and being humane. You only learn life when you have lived it. The theme is so repetitive. I teach it every year, and every year something or the other always comes from this. it also is similar. It is talking about life. The essay topic of the previous year talked about happiness, that happiness has to be seen as a journey and not as a destination. Process orientation reduces anxiety. It sustains growth. It prevents post-goal emptiness. You can talk about all these themes. It does not require much elaboration. You can also talk about habits. You can talk about systems. You can talk about goals. You can talk about daily changes that people can accumulate if they follow systems. You can talk about ambition and how ambition can overpower and color our perception so much that we don't appreciate the actual things in life. You can talk about how the real things in life and the best things about it are free. Talk about what we take for granted. Talk about gratitude. Talk about what we should pay more attention to. Talk about being mindful. Talk about being there in the moment. Talk about not being stuck in the past. Use the Buddha in this essay topic to illustrate that change is inevitable. The only thing we have control of is the present moment, not the present, not the past, neither the future. The last essay topic. This one is much more close to previous other essay topics. Again, this is very repetitive. The same theme has been asked. At least 3 essay topics I can think of the past 2-3 years that have the same theme. Contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. There was an essay topic a few years ago about materialism being a chimera and spirituality and the search for enlightenment as being empty or something like that. Similar theme. It is talking about what is real wealth. It is talking about what is real happiness. It is talking about what is really luxury. It is talking about what materialism has to do, what hedonism has to do with the good life versus what an internal, mentally healthy human being can get to experience if they do not fall into those FOMO-driven debt traps that society is riddled with. And talk about social media here. You can talk about all the things that are in your head where you have read essay or essay and ethics both. That I think, without going a lot into the details, is basically the overall lowdown of this year's essay topic. I see no surprises at all. I think even if you had written a few essay topics or analyzed them from the previous years, you would have arrived at decent content for this. Nothing I have said can underscore the fact that how you write it will determine what marks you get. None of the essay topics require a lot of GS knowledge. None of them require you to load a lot of knowledge into it. Doesn't matter if you use this theme or that theme. Did you interpret it correctly? Most essay topics require no deep interpretation. They are not highly abstract, nor are they very metaphorical. There was this essay topic a few years ago, a ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are for. It's highly metaphorical. Just like the muddy water essay that we spoke about. They may require some interpretation. The first one about truth and color requires interpretation. Reality, the real is rational, the rational is real. And previous essay topic requires a lot of interpretation and philosophical depth. Most of these topics do not. It would depend, like I said, more and more, I keep repeating, it would depend on what you wrote, how you wrote it. Did you write it in a way that was simple to understand? Did you complicate it? Did you superimpose necessarily without any real reason? Did you superimpose your pestle analysis on top of it? Was it required? Did it add to the essay, or did it just add volume to the essay? Those will be the factors that the UPSC examiner will look at, and they read the essays carefully. From the years of my experience, I think you will get what you deserve. Thank you and all the best.